All right, everyone. Section 4.8, our eighth and final section of Unit 4 in AP HuG here, Ethnic Conflicts and Genocide. Let's take a look. As you may have realized throughout Unit 4, sometimes, while ethnicity and religion in themselves are very unifying forces and can bring people together in a very peaceful and celebratory way, they can also sometimes be the causes of division. And our goal today with this section is to see examples of both of those forces in play. One you've already seen. In Yugoslavia, there existed many different ethnicities, and throughout the late 80s and then, unfortunately, violently throughout the early 1990s, many civil wars broke out among these different ethnicities who were attempting to establish their own sovereign states. Well, this breakup of Yugoslavia became known as Balkanization. It was named after the Balkan Peninsula, where Yugoslavia was once located and where those countries individually are located today, such as Croatia, Serbia, Macedonia, and many others. So the term Balkanization was coined by what happened to Yugoslavia, but it came to be a larger representation of ethnic conflict resulting in the fragmentation of a state or a country, the breakup, the dissolution of a country. And here is a map of what was once Yugoslavia and the countries that were created as a result of the breakup. All right, so let's shift our focus to North America here for a moment. We've discussed at length the different ethnic groups in the United States, but what about our neighbors to the north in Canada? There's actually been a movement that has lost a little bit of steam recently, but is still very much a collective effort to establish a separate, independent nation in the eastern portion of Canada. In other words, Quebec. Quebec is very much influenced by French Canadian culture. This was the region of the country that was originally colonized by the French, and it's become a very distinct culture and ethnic group within the general state of Canada. And some have called for the independence of the region known as Quebec from the rest of the country. All right, let's shift our focus over to Europe for a moment in the United Kingdom, which is a really interesting example of a multi-ethnic state. The United Kingdom is actually divided into four main parts or ethnic groups: England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And then in the British Isles, the other country that exists is the Republic of Ireland. So looking a little bit closer at the British Isles on this map, you can see the distinct portions of the United Kingdom. Here's Wales over on the western region of England. Here's England itself, the biggest of the four. Scotland up north. And then Northern Ireland is actually connected to the Republic of Ireland. But remember, we talked about the religious and ethnic conflict that led to a division between those two. All right, let's swing our focus over to Western Asia here for a moment, or what we usually refer to as the Middle East. And in the Middle East, you can see there's a plethora of different ethnic groups. There are a few countries that are predominantly populated by one ethnic group or another, Turkey being one of them. They're mostly ethnic Turks. Syria being another, mostly ethnic Arabs, specifically Sunni Muslims. In Iran, mostly ethnic Persians. And then you can see this orange area. This represents the ethnic Kurds. The Kurdish people are a Muslim ethnic group, but while they share the religion of most people in this region, they have very different values and a very distinct culture, and one that actually aligns more closely with the United States than many of the countries in this region. And we've actually had US forces that have fought alongside the Kurdish people in this region of the world. So let's take a look a little bit further eastward towards Central Asia. Once again, you can see it is quite a complex mosaic of different ethnic groups in this region of the world. Now, unfortunately, sometimes This complex mosaic of ethnicity or religion can result in various levels of conflict and even turn into ethnic cleansing or genocide. One of the main examples of both of these things that stands out in world history is the Holocaust. And during the Holocaust, there was both ethnic cleansing and genocide. Ethnic cleansing is the forced removal of a particular ethnic or religious group from a certain area, whereas genocide is the mass extinction or killing of a group of people in an attempt to completely eliminate them from existence. And we saw both of those things happen or attempted during the Holocaust, as millions of Jews and other ethnic groups were forced to move from one place to another, forced to migrate, and in many cases, killed. So ethnophobia and xenophobia are really the forces behind ethnic cleansing and genocide. Ethnophobia is a fear of people of a particular ethnicity, and oftentimes that fear develops into hatred, and people act out in that hatred. Xenophobia is a fear of people who are from other countries, and when you put the two together, it can become a very potent force for hatred and sometimes violence. After World War II and during World War II, we see the migration of millions and millions and millions of people. And once World War II was over specifically, and people weren't forced to be in certain areas anymore, Europe was essentially repopulated. People went from this area to that area to that area, either looking for family members or looking to start a new life after everything that had happened during World War II. So we discussed a little bit the ethnic cleansing that took place in Yugoslavia, and essentially what happened there was the division and this call for independence among various ethnic groups eventually resulted in so much fury and so much conflict that it wasn't just a political or a military struggle anymore. It was everyday people. And you saw some of that in the video that we watched on Yugoslavia. But what you didn't see is the actual ethnic breakdown of this region. And this map is showing you a little bit of that. So specifically looking at these two maps, this is before 1991 in this region of the world, and then the map on the right is after 1998 as ethnic cleansing took place in that region. And you can see some of the changes in the ethnic makeup as these various ethnic groups came into conflict and violent conflict with one another. If you'd like to dive a little bit deeper into the Yugoslav wars, I included a 3-minute clip here that gives you just a brief overview of this war, or I should say wars, because there were many. It wasn't just civil war. It was an entire breakdown of the region into multiple ethnic conflicts. So if you want to take 3 minutes to dive into that, I would encourage you to do that. Finally, shifting our focus to Africa. As you look at the map of Africa, the borders of these countries were established by European powers who didn't really take into consideration the various ethnic groups and the cultures therein, or the history between these groups when they established many of these borders. And what this resulted in was a great deal of ethnic conflict and ethnic divide, and in some cases, civil war. One of the conflicts that stands out as just a horrifying example of borders gone wrong is the ethnic conflict that took place in Rwanda that eventually turned into not just ethnic cleansing, but genocide, as hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives and millions were forced to migrate from their homes in search of safety. And so essentially, we have millions of refugees going to places like Uganda, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Tanzania, Burundi, as they flee for their lives. So, in many cases, migration can be the result of ethnic cleansing, of genocide, and people who are fleeing different regions to try and escape that genocide. And remember, these particular migrants would be considered refugees.